Greetings, and it's time we give some overdue attention to optical drive emulators here on LGR. Now, ODEs are something I've touched on before regarding game consoles, but this time we're looking at two for vintage computers. It's exciting since they let you bypass aging or dead optical drives and instead load disk images from an SD card. But while the Sega Saturn and Dreamcast, the PlayStation, GameCube, and so on have had disk emulators for a good while, PCs haven't received quite the same attention. And it makes sense. There's not as big of a need since replacing a 5¼ drive is trivial. Plus, software solutions have existed for decades. Daemon Tools, Alcohol 120%, WinCD, MU, and more can mount disk images in Windows 9X. And for DOS, you have things like Shisu CD, and they all work well, but you do need computer hardware able to emulate a drive with enough storage space for images, which leaves out lots of early 90s and older systems. Not to mention CD digital audio support is weird depending on your sound device and drivers, and as nostalgic as it is using CD-ROMs, it can get a tad irksome keeping up with discs and dealing with the noise. Then there's the increasing failure rate of drives themselves. Companies haven't made them in decades, and the supply of good replacements is dwindling. And disk rot exists, so it's been many a retro PC user's dream to have something like a Gotek for CDs, which is a drop-in replacement for floppy drives, letting you load disk images from flash memory using a handy front panel interface of some kind for navigating and mounting disks. And that brings us to today's topic, the Pico IDE and Zulu IDE. Two homebrew optical drive emulator solutions for systems with IDE ATA/ATAPI controllers. With the Zulu IDE on sale already in multiple models, and the Pico IDE currently in a crowdfunding stage, planning to ship to customers a little bit later in 2026. They both do the same thing at their core, which is emulate an IDE interface and optical drive hardware by way of a Raspberry Pi RP2350 microcontroller and a microSD card. With Redbook CD digital audio support, and even virtual hard disks too. But each works a bit differently and have their own pluses and minuses, so I thought it'd be fun to compare the two since they're currently two of the best optical drive solutions, at least for IDE. We've had USB options for years. For instance, the iOdd devices like the ST400 here, letting you mount images through this box that holds an SSD inside. It's really nice, but does require a system with USB CD-ROM support and costs over $100, not including the added cost of an SSD. There's also the USB ODE, an intriguing project I haven't yet tried, though I've seen Phil's Computer Lab review it and it looks great, especially for the price at around $40 with its optional screen, but it's very much a DIY project. I don't think anywhere sells one pre-assembled, plus it still needs USB. So, for IDE, one of the only things I knew of for a while was the IDE simulator. That cost $100, but every time I looked, it was unavailable due to limited production. But then in 2025, this bit of news grabbed my attention. The already awesome Pico Gus sound card got a firmware update adding CD-ROM emulation. What was already a Swiss Army knife for sound cards can now load disk images from its USB port around back. I was planning to do a video on that, but then two things happened. One, I was given an early Zulu IDE V2 compact at VCF Midwest 2025 by Mike, one of the folks working on the project, putting that on my radar. Then the Pico IDE was announced, a new project from Ian, the creator of the Pico Gus, and it looked just as promising. He sent me this pre-release example to check out, and I was happy to, especially since I already had a Zulu IDE. More than one now, since I've received the latest hybrid V2 model, plus some extras that really flesh out the features of the previous compact. So let's get stuck in and test these out and see how they work. Right, so let me be clear, each one of these are in different states of completeness and availability at the moment. For instance, the Pico IDE isn't shipping out yet, and this early example case is 3D printed, whereas the final product will be ABS injection molded plastic, sold with or without control panel electronics installed. And if you step up to the Pico Deluxe model, its front panel will have rubber buttons instead of 3D printed ones. Zulu IDE is also sold without a control panel, but there's a $15 board to add on those electronics. Similar for the drive enclosure, they've made 3D printable models available in different sizes, but it's an optional extra. And the Zulu now comes in both compact and hybrid models, with the former lacking CD digital audio output and Wi-Fi. To get those, it needs the optional CD audio DAC plus RM2 Shield, which plugs in on top. And the hybrid has CD digital audio but no Wi-Fi, so for that it needs another RM2 Shield plugged in. Each model of Pico IDE has CD audio built in, and the Deluxe has Wi-Fi, so with that one there's no add-ons needed. Really, it comes down to the Zulu having a more modular approach and the Pico having it all fully integrated, and whether you need all the optional features depends on your use case. Either way, at their core, they're really similar, and with each device, the installation is about the same. Just need a 40-pin IDE cable and 4-pin floppy-style Berg power connector. Then ensure cable priority jumper settings are correct for your drive configuration, same as any old IDE drive. The microSD card can be formatted as either FAT32 or exFAT, with the recommendation being to use the SD Association Card Formatter program to completely overwrite the card and give it the correct MBR partitioning. Then insert the card, power up your PC, and pop into your BIOS settings or watch the startup sequence to verify it's detecting your device. If so, you're good to go with filling up the card. The Pico IDE has a recommended folder structure for different types of files, but it's not necessary. And if you ever need to change default settings on either device, you can place an INI configuration file in the root directory, letting you tweak settings and device modes if you ever need. This is all laid out step by step in the documentation on the Pico IDE website and on the Zulu IDE GitHub manual page with a handy Getting Started section taking you through the basics before diving deeper. But yeah, both devices currently handle ISO and Q files, with the latter referencing an associated bin or IMG file for both data and audio tracks combined. The Pico IDE also handles toast files for those with an IDE-equipped Macintosh, I suppose. And with either one, there's no current support for images made by Clone CD, Alcohol, or Nero, so no CCD, MDF, or NRG files, which is unfortunate seeing as so many discs have been archived that way over the years. But yeah, mounting is really simple on both using the front panel. The Pico has just 4 buttons for navigating settings and files. It's all really easy to figure out. The Zulu has a more Gotek-like interface. It's nice and simple to navigate using this control dial that presses in to select things. If you're without a screen at all, though, you're meant to press this eject button or hook an external button to this 2-pin header. Pressing eject moves to the next file alphabetically, or use your OS's software eject function to do the same. And yeah, once an image is mounted, things work just like you've inserted a CD-ROM. Or DVD-ROM, actually. These can mount those too. Both devices load DVD movies and software just fine. And bootable images also work, so long as your system is set to boot from optical, which is great for getting operating systems installed. And if you're loading an image with a Q file and audio, then you can get CD audio, either outputting through the 3.5mm jack on front, or over the analog MPC2 connector around back, which connects to your sound card. On the Pico IDE at least. Again, the Zulu IDE Compact doesn't have that without the CD audio board. The Zulu Hybrid V2 has it built in, so if CD-DA is important to your use case, then that may be the better choice. And yeah, I checked, and digital CD audio over the IDE cable seems to be unsupported, at least how my PC is configured. Honestly, it may be a driver issue since I think WDMs are required, and I'm not even sure my sound card supports that. Still, both devices can do CD audio when directly connected to a sound card, and that is just wonderful. But what about copy protection? Plenty of late 90s and early 2000s CD-ROMs used really annoying DRM to prevent backups, and that's very much intact on the kinds of disk images that these devices can read on current firmware. Especially irksome are things like SafeDisk and Secu-ROM, so you'll still need a CD crack to bypass that crap here. Really, the sweet spot for these devices are CD-ROMs up until 1997 or so, as most games from bigger publishers beyond that point are gonna need cracking. If you're using it on a DOS PC though, chances are any disks you're loading won't be protected anyway. And hey, speaking of DOS, check this out. The Pico IDE also has a control program for managing things through the command line. And this is an excellent option, and I wish the Zulu IDE had something similar, especially for configs without a front panel. It does have a web interface for controlling through Wi-Fi, but as mentioned earlier, that requires an add-on board in the case of both models. The CD DAC plus RM2 shield for the compact model, and the hybrid needs a separate RM2 shield. The Deluxe Pico has Wi-Fi built in, but whichever way you go, this sure is convenient, particularly if you have a ton of disk images to sort through. Each device uses a web service to directly connect to the device over your local Wi-Fi network, letting you manage loading and ejecting images through a browser interface. And on the Pico, you can modify the config file over your local network and even transfer ISOs. It's a little slow, but it works, and I love having the option. On the topic of speed, I'd usually rely on benchmarks, but for me, these numbers have been wildly unhelpful. And besides, dozens of variables contribute to results depending on your system, so instead let's go with something more anecdotal, installing the game Midtown Madness and comparing that with a real optical drive and a Demon Tools virtual drive running from an SD card on a SCSI to SD adapter. And yeah, both the Zulu and the Pico finished in a very similar time to my physical disk drive, rated at 48 speed, only taking a few seconds longer, with the Zulu being a bit faster than the Pico. And it makes sense, the Zulu is capable of higher throughput since it supports Ultra DMA modes, whereas the Pico's fastest mode is multi-word DMA, meaning the Zulu is capable of about double the transfer rate, reading up to 28 megabytes per second compared to the Pico's 16.7 or so, particularly handy for hard disk emulation, though in my view, both are more than speedy enough for optical disks. Finally, there are a few more features beyond optical disks, with the first being shared between the two: hard drive image mounting. Each device can switch over to IDE hard disk mode and let you mount fixed-size VHDs, virtual hard disk files. Emphasis on the fixed size, dynamic ones aren't supported, and this is something you can create in emulators like 86box. Apparently. I've had a lot of trouble getting my own to work, but using some pre-made example VHDs worked perfectly straight away. They're detected on startup and boot no problem. Though you can only use IDE hard disk or ATAPI CD-ROM mode one at a time, not simultaneously on current firmware. Though hey, if you have multiple devices, you can set one as a hard drive and the other as a CD-ROM. Both the Zulu and Pico work great side by side. And then there are two modes exclusive to the Zulu IDE, zip emulation and USB mass storage mode. No surprise, zip emulation makes it show up as an iOmega zip drive, which is great for using the Zulu with things like music samplers, your Akai MPCs and Roland SPs and such. And lastly, the Zulu also has a USB mass storage mode you can enable in the config file, so now when you plug in a USB cable, as long as it's not in IDE mode, the contents of the microSD card show up as a standard USB storage device, basically turning it into a card reader. A useful option indeed. And that's about it for these IDE ODEs, at least as they are right now. Obviously, things will change as firmware improves. These are very active projects, but the core functionality of both is already quite good. You kinda can't go wrong with either one, though I personally prefer the Pico IDE's front panel controls and overall feature set on the Deluxe model without needing add-on boards. But both of them perform the main goal of mounting CD-ROM images fantastically. So as it so often does, the pricing is a major deciding point, so let's compare. For the Zulu V2, there are two models available from multiple online storefronts. The hybrid model, which includes the CD audio DAC but no Wi-Fi, it's $79 without CD headers or $89 fully configured with all connectors. Then there's the compact Model V2, which is also $89, but remember, Redbook Audio and Wi-Fi needs the CD Audio RM2 shield there. That'll likely cost $15 or so, and neither one by default includes a front panel. So if you want that, you can grab the additional control board assembly, another $15, plus you'll need a 3D printed enclosure, or you could grab one from the likes of CertaShop, who are offering pre-built control panels for the equivalent of about $30. Regardless, what I'm saying is it costs roughly $120 to get a Zulu fully kitted out, whereas a Pico is $110 for the deluxe model that comes with everything, no add-ons needed. or you can opt to get it without the front panel components or Wi-Fi for $69. And don't get me wrong, the Zulu IDE is still a great device once you get everything you want added to it. But the Pico IDE right out the gate feels more like a complete product, one that's simpler to get fully configured with its front panel while costing a little less. With the caveat being that it is not yet ready and shipping out, whereas Zulus are already built and available as I record this. The Pico is still months away from releasing right now, but either way, the early version satisfied me enough that I've already reserved another one, because I want one of the black injection molds to match my Megaluminum monster build. There are links to both devices in the video description if you're interested, though keep in mind pricing and availability are subject to change depending on when you're watching this. Anyway, thanks again to Mike and Alex and Ian for hooking me up with these devices and helping me get them working their best. And to y'all in the comments, let me know if you're interested in this sort of thing or what features you'd like to see in the future. And personally, I'd like support for both hard drive and CD emulation at the same time, which is being looked into, so here's hoping. And as always, thanks for watching LGR.